Welcome to Boring Cinema. Tonight, we gently revisit the story of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. Settle in, relax, and let the film unfold slowly. There are stories that announce themselves with a kind of pleasure, stories that know exactly what kind of thing they are, and that pursue that thing with the full energy of their considerable inventiveness, without apology and without the specific self-consciousness of a story that is trying to be more serious than it is. Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, released in 2003 and directed by Gore Verbinski, is that kind of story. It is a swashbuckling adventure built from the pleasures of the genre, sword fights and ships and buried treasure, and the romance of the sea as a place where ordinary rules do not apply. And it pursues those pleasures with the specific wit and momentum of a film that has thought carefully about how to make each of them feel both fresh and familiar. The film is also, beneath the pleasures, a story about freedom and belonging, about the various ways that people find themselves trapped in roles they did not choose, and about the various ways they find, or fail to find, their way out of those roles. Its hero is a pirate, which is itself a statement about the kind of story it is. A story interested not in the people who enforce the rules of the world, but in the people who operate in the space between the rules, who have decided that the freedom to move and choose and pursue is worth the specific cost that freedom charges. It is also, more than almost any other film of its era, a story about a performance. The person at its center performs elaborately and almost continuously, and the performance is so fully inhabited that the question of where the performance ends and the person begins is one of the film's genuine mysteries. We are going to spend a great deal of time with him and with the people around him and with the specific world they inhabit. A world of blue Caribbean water and white sand, and the particular beauty of a place that is both paradise and danger, depending on who you are and what you have done. Settle in. The sea is calm tonight. We begin on the water. The Caribbean, in the early 18th century, is an ocean that belongs to no one and to everyone who is strong enough to claim a portion of it. The British Empire has established its presence in the form of Port Royal, Jamaica, a fortified port town built on the edge of a harbor that opens onto the wider ocean, a place of commerce and naval administration, and the specific civilization that the British bring to their colonial possessions, which is the civilization of order and hierarchy, and the clear demarcation between who has authority and who must submit to it. The film opens on the ocean itself. A small boat moves through the fog of an early morning sea, its lone sail catching whatever wind is available, its single occupant standing at the bow with the ease of someone for whom this kind of travel is entirely natural. The occupant is Captain Jack Sparrow, and the first image the film gives us of him, standing at the bow of a boat that is visibly sinking, as though the sinking is simply a condition of the journey rather than an emergency requiring a response, establishes everything essential about him before he has said a word. He is, in the most complete possible sense, a pirate. His clothing has the quality of things accumulated over a long period from many different sources. The coat, the hat, the beads in his hair, the compass hanging at his side, the specific physical accumulation of a man who has been in many places and who has taken from each place something that pleased him without particular attention to whether the things go together. They do not go together exactly. What they constitute is a specific aesthetic that is entirely his own, that could not belong to anyone else, that carries in every detail the history of wherever he has been and whatever he has done. He wears rum in his manner as much as in his blood, a pleasantly loose bearing, present in everything he does, the walk, the gesture, the fond philosophical interest with which he regards whatever situation he finds himself in. He arrives at Port Royal. He steps from the sinking boat to the dock as the boat goes under, presses a coin into the harbor master's palm, and moves into the town with the ease of someone who has decided that ease is the appropriate mode for this environment. Port Royal has the atmosphere of a British colonial port. The ships in the harbor, the warehouses along the dock, the naval officers moving with the purposeful efficiency of men who are very clear about their function in the order of things. The civilians going about the business of commerce in the particular way of people living in a port town, where the commerce is the reason for the town. It is a place of reasonable prosperity and reasonable order, and the specific comfort of people who are inside the system that the system is designed to benefit. On the battlements above the harbor, the morning is unfolding in a different register. Governor Swan and his daughter Elizabeth are observing the harbor from the walls of the fort. Elizabeth Swan is 17 years old, and she has been in Port Royal since her father was appointed governor, which is long enough that the port has become home, but not long enough that it has become the whole of what she can imagine. She is standing at the parapet in the morning air, in the specific posture of a young woman who is looking at the horizon in a way that is about more than the horizon, who is looking at the ships in the harbor and the sea beyond them with the quality of someone for whom the ships represent something: freedom, possibility, the specific romance of going somewhere rather than being somewhere. She is wearing a corset, newly arrived from England. The corset is tight. The morning air is warm. The combination of these two facts will become relevant almost immediately. She sees a ship on the horizon, a ship moving toward the harbor in the peculiar manner of a ship whose sails are black, which is a detail that the morning light makes both visible and ambiguous, because black sails in the morning light have a quality that could be many things, and that Elizabeth is not yet experienced enough to read with the certainty of the naval officers around her who have gone quiet at the sight of them. The ship is the Black Pearl, though Elizabeth does not know this yet. The name will become known to her shortly, in the way that names of things you have heard about, as legend become known when you encounter the thing itself, and understand from the encounter that the legend was accurate. Down in the harbor, Jack Sparrow is conducting his own affairs. He is looking at the ships in the harbor with the professional attention of a man who is evaluating them, not the aesthetic attention of someone who admires ships in the abstract, but the practical attention of a man who is interested in which of the ships in front of him could carry him where he wants to go, that is to say, away from here with reasonable speed. He has a destination. He has always had a destination, in the sense that a man who operates as he operates always has the next thing in mind, even when the present thing has not yet resolved itself. He has business with a ship called the Interceptor. He becomes aware, in the course of his reconnaissance of the harbor, that he is being watched. He is not unaccustomed to being watched, but the quality of the watching varies, and the current watching has the quality of official watching, the watching of naval officers who have noted the arrival of someone who looks like what he is and who are in the process of deciding whether and how to respond to that noting. He moves through the harbor town with the quality of someone managing the gap between being seen and being caught, which is a gap he is experienced in managing. He finds rope. He finds the opportunity that rope and a knowledge of the harbor's basic physics provide. He operates with the unhurried competence of someone for whom improvisation is not a failure of planning, but the primary mode. The person who does not plan because the world is more interesting than any plan he could make for it, and who therefore engages with what is actually present rather than with what he expected to be present. He encounters Elizabeth. The encounter is not planned by either of them. Elizabeth is in the harbor area, having descended from the battlements, and the coincidence of their paths produces the charged moment of two people finding themselves in the same place at the same time for reasons that have nothing to do with each other and that are about to become entirely entangled. The Black Pearl is in the harbor. The pearl is real. And Elizabeth, who has been wearing the medallion around her neck since it came to her years ago, the gold coin from a particular chest on a particular island, an Aztec coin with specific properties that she does not know about and that the film has not yet explained, tumbles from the battlements into the water below. She falls. She sinks, which the corset and its associated effects on breathing and movement make inevitable. And as she sinks, the medallion falls from her neck and drifts downward in the water, and something happens that the people on the surface cannot see. A pulse, a spreading circle of dark water emanating from the place where the medallion touched the sea, as though the water itself has received a communication that will alter the situation in ways that none of the people on the surface have yet understood. Jack is in the water. He has gone in after her before the decision has fully resolved itself, moving, as he always does, ahead of the thinking. He pulls her up, gets her to the surface and to the dock, and she breathes the air of a morning. She came much closer to missing than she would have liked. He is taken. The naval officers who have been watching him arrive at exactly this moment, seeing the man who just saved someone's life and arresting him anyway, because the good act does not change the identity of the man who performed it. Jack Sparrow is a pirate. Pirates are arrested. He is taken to the fort, where he is processed in the manner of a British colonial authority processing a known criminal. His effects are catalogued. The brand on his wrist is noted. The P that marks him as a pirate. The evidence of a prior arrest and the sentence that followed it burned into the skin in the permanent manner of a sentence that is intended to follow a person through every subsequent encounter with the law. He is placed in a cell to await hanging. In the cell, he assesses the situation. For Jack Sparrow, assessing a situation never produces despair. He looks at the cell, the bars, the objects in his vicinity, not seeing objects, but resources, things that could be used, if used correctly, to produce the condition he wants to be in, which is not this one. Will Turner finds him. Will Turner is a blacksmith's apprentice in Port Royal, or rather he is a young man of considerable skill at the craft of blacksmithing and swordsmithing, who works in the smithy of a man named Brown, and who has developed through years of labor at the forge and practice with the blades he makes, excellence with the sword that the craft has given him access to. He is the son of Bootstrap Bill Turner, though he does not know the full significance of that fact yet. He has a face that the morning has not yet had a chance to mark in the way that faces are marked by years, and a quality of seriousness about him that is not solemnity, but the seriousness of someone who takes things seriously. because the things seem to him to deserve it. He has come to the cell because Jack Sparrow saved Elizabeth Swann, and Elizabeth Swann matters to Will Turner in the way that a person matters when they have been part of your world since you were both children, and when the mattering has accumulated over the years into something that he has not yet found the occasion or the courage to name. He offers to get Jack out. The negotiation between them, which is also the film's introduction of the central alliance of its story, is conducted with the quality of a negotiation between two people who each have something the other wants, and who are both aware that the wanting is mutual and that the meeting of the wants requires a deal. Will has the means to get Jack out of the cell. Jack has knowledge of a ship and a crew and the pirate expertise that Will does not have, and that the situation, as Will is beginning to understand it, is going to require. The Black Pearl has attacked Port Royal. The attack comes in the night of the same day on which all the preceding events have taken place, as though the day has been building toward this from its beginning, as though Elizabeth's fall into the harbor and the pulse of the medallion in the water and Jack's arrival all belong to the same unfolding that the Pearl's arrival in the harbor is the next stage of. The Pearl comes in with its black sails and its guns, and the terrifying efficiency of a ship that has been doing this for a long time, and that has not lost the capacity for it. The cannon fire begins. Port Royal, which was an hour ago the picture of colonial order and prosperity, becomes in the space of the first salvos the picture of what happens to order when something outside the order arrives with overwhelming force and no particular respect for what the order has built. Buildings catch fire. The harbor erupts in the chaos of a naval bombardment received rather than conducted. The citizens of the port scatter and shelter and run in the various ways of people for whom this kind of thing was a theoretical risk of living in a colonial port town, and who are now discovering that theoretical and actual are different categories. The crew of the Black Pearl comes ashore. They come in boats from the Pearl with weapons and with the focused purpose of people who are looking for something specific rather than simply causing destruction for its own sake. They are looking for Elizabeth. More precisely, they are looking for the medallion, the Aztec gold coin that Elizabeth dropped into the harbor when she fell, which means they are looking for whoever had it, which means they are looking for her. They have been following the trail of the coin across the Caribbean for years with the determination of people who have very good reasons for finding it, and they have followed it here. Elizabeth invokes parley. Parley, the provision of the pirate code that requires the crew to cease hostilities and bring her before their captain, rather than simply taking her as a prisoner in the ordinary way, is a word she knows from some reading she has done, some book in the governor's library that contained the specific details of the code that governs pirate interaction. She invokes it with the confidence of someone who has decided that knowing a rule and invoking it is better than not knowing it, which is a position that is both correct and also about to place her in a situation significantly more complicated than she anticipated. She is brought to Captain Barbossa. Barbossa is the captain of the Black Pearl, and he is a man of a specific and unmistakable quality, a man who has the combination of intelligence and ruthlessness that makes a person genuinely dangerous rather than simply violent, who has built his authority over a pirate crew through the combination of competence and menace that pirate crews respond to, who has a way of speaking that has the formality of someone who has thought about language as a tool and who uses it accordingly. He is also, though neither Elizabeth nor the audience knows it yet, a man under a curse. He and his entire crew are incapable of feeling any of the ordinary sensations of being alive. The taste of food, the warmth of the sun, the texture of a breeze. They exist, but they do not live. They have been sailing across the Caribbean for a decade in search of the one thing that will end it. She gives him a name. She tells him she is Elizabeth Turner, not Elizabeth Swan, a false name taken in the moment under the pressure of needing to give him something. The inspiration of a person who understands that what she is holding, the medallion, is the thing he wants, and who hopes that the name she gives him will be enough of a key to what he is looking for, to satisfy him and buy her safety. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is the exact key he has been looking for, because the Turner blood is the specific thing the curse requires, and the pearl takes her and sails. Port Royal burns behind them. Will Turner, in the aftermath, understands that Elizabeth has been taken, and the understanding produces not confusion or grief, but action, the immediate orientation toward what needs to happen next. He has no ship. He has no crew. He has the skills of a blacksmith and the deal he has just made with Jack Sparrow. Jack, who has observed the attack from his cell, has his own reasons for wanting the Black Pearl. He had the Black Pearl once. The ship that Barbossa commands was Jack's ship, commandeered by Barbossa during a mutiny that Jack survived in the specific manner in which the legends of his survival have accumulated around him, which is to say barely and through means that are better described afterward than experienced during. He was marooned. He escaped the marooning in a way involving sea turtles that the stories attribute to him, and that he neither confirms nor denies with any particular commitment to accuracy. He has been without the Black Pearl since, and the pearl, in Jack Sparrow's accounting of what matters now to him, is the central fact. The ship that represents everything he understands freedom to mean. The vessel without which the life he has chosen is only partly achievable. He and Will need each other. The deal is this. Will help Jack get a ship, and Jack will use his knowledge of where the Black Pearl is going and how to get there to help Will rescue Elizabeth. Neither of them fully trusts the other. Neither of them needs to. The deal is structured so that their respective interests align for the duration of what they have agreed to do, which is the best kind of deal in a world where the alignment of interests is more reliable than the alignment of character. They commandeer the Interceptor. The Interceptor is a Navy ship in Port Royal Harbor, and the commandeering of it is one of the film's great sequences of overlapping complications. A plan that should not work, and that works anyway through the combination of Jack's improvisation and the Navy's reasonable but incorrect assumptions about what is happening, through the quality of a situation that is being managed by someone who is much better at managing situations than the people who are trying to prevent the situation from being managed. Commodore Norrington, who commands the port and who has reasons of his own involving Elizabeth to want the situation resolved in a specific way, arrives too late. The Interceptor is in open water. Jack sails the open water with the pleasure of a man returned to where he belongs, his navigation and seamanship finding their proper field of expression beyond the reach of Port Royal's authority. Will sails with him. He is not a sailor, but capable and practically intelligent. competent on ships in the basic ways that differ little from competence at other crafts he has spent years developing. He watches Jack and receives from the watching information he was not expecting. Who Jack actually is, consistently more complicated than the category of pirate suggests. They go to Tortuga. Tortuga is everything Port Royal is not. It is a pirate port on an island that the Spanish claimed and then abandoned, and that was subsequently claimed by everyone and no one. A place of the cheerful disorder of a community that has been built without reference to the rules that build most communities, where the organizing principle is the absence of organizing principle, where what people want and what people can get away from wanting are the same question, and the answer to both is everything. It smells of the sea and of rum, and of the mixture of things that accumulate in a port where the ships that come are not interested in giving information about where they have been or what they have carried. Jack moves through Tortuga with the ease of a man at home. He is more at home here than anywhere else, which is its own clear statement about what he values. He has friends here, or the pirate version of friends. People who know him, who have history with him, whose regard includes genuine affection and several particular grievances that have not been entirely settled. Among these is Joshua Gibbs. Gibbs is Jack's first mate, his most constant companion, the person who has been beside him through the more recent chapters of the pirate's career, who has watched Jack manage situations that should have been unmanageable, and who has developed through the watching a kind of faith in Jack's capacity for the improbable that coexists with the awareness that the improbable is always, in the end, still a matter of how things go rather than how Jack intends them to go. He is a man of middle age, with the specific weathered quality of someone who has been at sea for most of his life, and whose affection for Jack is genuine in the way that the affection between people who have been through things together is genuine, built from experience rather than from sentiment, which makes it more durable. Gibbs agrees to help. He agrees, as both of them understand he will, because the situation will proceed in the direction Jack is pointing it, and the only real choice is between being part of it or watching from outside. Gibbs has always chosen to be part of it. Jack recruits a crew. The crew is assembled with enthusiasm and without attention to the qualifications other employment might require. A varied collection of people who have arrived in Tortuga by routes they may or may not be entirely honest about, who sign on with a mixture of mercenary interest and genuine excitement at the promise of the Black Pearl. The Interceptor sails from Tortuga. Will Turner, in the course of the Tortuga visit, has learned things about Jack Sparrow that the categories he arrived with did not contain. He has learned that Jack had the pearl and that Barbossa took it. He has learned something about the specific manner in which the mutiny happened and the marooning that followed, which gives him a picture of the relationship between Jack and the pearl that is more personal and more painful than the simple piracy that Will's prior understanding of Jack would have predicted. He has also learned something about Bootstrap Bill Turner, his father, who was a sailor on the Black Pearl under Jack's captaincy, who was part of the crew that found the Aztec gold and triggered the curse, who was the one member of that crew who felt the wrongness of what they had done with sufficient force to throw his share of the gold into the sea, which meant that the curse could not be lifted without a piece of the gold and a drop of Turner blood, which is why Barbossa has been searching for a Turner across all the years since. The Interceptor continues. The days at sea carry the rhythms of a working passage. The watches, the maintenance, the cooking and sleeping, and the steady accumulation of familiarity that proximity over time always produces. Jack and Will occupy this time with conversations. They sword fight. The sword fight between Jack and Will, conducted in the hold of the Interceptor, is one of the film's most purely pleasurable sequences. Two exceptional swordsmen discovering each other's capabilities in the way of people who fight not to determine a winner, but to learn, to find the edges of the other person's skill and the extent of their own, to understand what they are dealing with in terms that only physical contact provides. Will is classically trained, which is to say he has learned the specific formal techniques of swordsmanship as a craft and has practiced them to a high degree of proficiency. Jack fights in a way that has no obvious school behind it, that seems to be constructed from the specific improvisational logic of a man who has been in a great many situations where sword fighting was necessary and who has developed from those situations a style that is entirely his own and that is very difficult to read because it does not follow the patterns that formal training creates the expectation of. Will cannot quite get the better of Jack, which surprises him. Jack cannot quite get the better of Will, which does not surprise him in the same way, but produces in him the quality of pleased recognition, the recognition of a person of genuine ability, in the way that people of genuine ability recognize each other. They come to an island. The island of Isla de Muerta, the island of the dead, is the destination, the place where the chest of Aztec gold is hidden, where the curse was released, and where the lifting of the curse requires the return of the last coin, paid with Turner blood. It is, in the geography of the film, a place that cannot be found except by someone who already knows where it is, hidden in a fog of rocks and dead water that the charts do not record, and that the compass, the ordinary compass, cannot navigate. Jack's compass does not point north. It points toward what Jack wants most. Jack's compass was given to him by the same person who had the Aztec chest. It points not toward magnetic north, but toward whatever the holder most wants to find. A detail consistent with the world the film has built, where the supernatural and the practical coexist without much need for explanation. Barbossa has Elizabeth. On the Black Pearl, across the weeks since Port Royal, Elizabeth has been navigating her situation as she navigates everything, working to understand it precisely, and then finding the element within it that can be worked with. She has negotiated with Barbossa. She has observed the crew. She has come to understand that the name she gave him, Turner, has created expectations she cannot meet, because the Turner blood the curse requires is not her blood. She watches Barbossa. He is a complicated antagonist in the sense that he is not simply malevolent. He is a man in the grip of an obsession that the curse itself has made absolute. The obsession with lifting the curse that has consumed the decade of his captaincy of the Pearl, that has turned what was an act of greed into the organizing principle of everything that followed. He tells Elizabeth in their conversations about the curse, about finding the chest, about the gold, about the moment when the crew understood what they had done and what it would take to undo it. He tells it with the quality of a man who has lived with the story for so long that the telling has become as automatic as breathing, that the story is simply the condition of everything rather than an event within it. He tells her that they cannot feel anything. He cannot taste the food. He cannot feel the warmth of the sun, or the cold of the water, or the wind on his face. He cannot feel drunk, which is a deprivation that the film treats with its characteristic lightness, but that is, in the accounting of the curse, one of its most telling details. That what was taken from them was the sensory life, the immediate physical experience of being alive, the pleasure of the body in the world that most people take entirely for granted. They exist. They do not live. The distinction is everything. He tells her this, and she listens, and there is between them a specific quality that is not quite sympathy and not quite its opposite, but something more complicated. The understanding that the man who took her from her home is also a man who is trapped in something that he did not entirely understand when he did the thing that trapped him, and that the trap is terrible in a way that her understanding of him cannot but register. The interceptor arrives. Will and Jack approach Isla de Muerta through the fog and the rocks with the quality of an approach that has been thought through, Jack's compass pointing them toward the chest, the knowledge of what they need to do when they get there providing the structure of the plan. The plan involves the chest and the coin and a drop of Will's blood, and then the rescue of Elizabeth, and the specific order in which these things need to happen is the subject of a discussion between Will and Jack, in which each of them is working from a different priority. Will's priority is Elizabeth. Jack's priority is the compass and the pearl, and the specific outcome that getting what he wants requires, which is more complicated than Will knows. Jack goes into the cave. The cave of Isla de Muerta is the film's most visually extravagant setting, a cavern of impossible scale, lit by the gold that fills it. Mountains of treasure accumulated across decades of pirate plunder, and the hoard that the Aztec gold occupies at its center, the chest sitting on a throne of coins and jewels, in the wan light of a cave that the sun never reaches directly, but that the gold itself seems to illuminate from within. It is beautiful, and it is dead. The beauty of the accumulated wealth of people who can no longer enjoy it, of treasure that was taken and cannot now be spent. Barbossa is in the cave with the chest, and Elizabeth is there, and the crew of the Pearl, and the ceremony of the lifting of the curse is being prepared. Jack arrives in the cave in the manner of someone arriving somewhere he has calculated carefully, whose arrival is neither the assault of a raiding party nor the surrender of a defeated man, but the arrival of someone who has a plan and who is in the place where the plan requires him to be. He speaks to Barbossa. The conversation between Jack and Barbossa in the cave of Isla de Muerta is the film's most purely theatrical dialogue. Two men who know each other well, whose history includes the mutiny and the marooning and the decade of separation, and the weight of each of those things, who are both in the same place for reasons that are almost entirely opposed, and who are both sufficiently skilled at the management of conversation to conduct the exchange at a level that is not quite what it appears to be on the surface. Jack offers Barbossa something. He offers him the interceptor and the crew of the interceptor in exchange for the Black Pearl. He frames the offer in the specific language of a business proposition made by a man who believes the proposition is in the other party's interest. And Barbossa considers it with the quality of a man who is weighing not whether the offer is good, but whether Jack is giving him the full picture of what the offer entails. He is not. Will enters the cave. Barbossa takes him. He recognizes the Turner name and the Turner blood for what they are, the actual requirement for the curse's lifting. Which means he no longer needs Elizabeth. He uses Will's blood. The coin is dipped in Turner blood and returned to the chest with the other coins, completing the number, closing the account, and nothing happens. The curse is not lifted. It is not lifted because the accounting requires not just any Turner blood, but the right disposition of the coin. Something has not been done correctly. Some element of the specific requirement has not been met. And Barbossa and his crew stand in the cave with the chest open and the coins returned and nothing changed. And the understanding that comes to each of them across the following seconds is the understanding of people who have been working towards something for a decade and who have just discovered that what they arrived at is not the arrival. Jack has been managing this. He has palmed one of the coins. The coin will return to the chest was not the last. There is one still out, still unaccounted for, and Jack has it. The maneuver of the palmed coin is the hinge on which the story's final act turns, and the film handles it with the precise timing of a magic trick that works because the audience is looking at one thing while the relevant thing is happening somewhere else. Jack has been performing the negotiation with Barbossa and the conversation with Will and the management of the cave's various elements, and while doing all of these things, he has also been keeping a specific piece of the accounting out of view. The fighting begins. The cave becomes the scene the film has been building toward. The crew of the Interceptor and the crew of the Pearl fighting in the cavern, where the space is large and the light is strange, and the terrain is a mountain of gold. Jack fights Barbossa. Their duel moves through the cave with the momentum of two people who have history and who are now conducting the physical expression of that history, who are fighting not only for the immediate situation, but for the account between them that has been open since the mutiny. Barbossa fights with the absolute commitment of someone who is cursed, who cannot be killed in the ordinary sense, who takes wounds that would end an ordinary fight and continues because the curse is still active. And the curse means that death is not available. To him, not really, not yet. Jack fights him and falls. He is shot, and he staggers back, and the cave holds its breath in the way of a narrative that has arrived at the moment where the outcome is uncertain, where what happens next could go several ways, and where the going depends on things that are not yet visible. He shows them the coin. He opens his hand, and there is the coin, the last coin, the one piece of the accounting that was not in the chest when Will's blood was returned. And what the coin means is that the curse is still active, which means that Jack, who has taken a shot that would have killed him, is himself cursed in the specific way the curse works, which is to say he is neither entirely alive nor entirely dead, held in the same in-between space that Barbossa and his crew have occupied for a decade. He shoots Barbossa. He uses the pistol he has been carrying across the length of the film. The one pistol, the single shot, a detail with an appointment to keep. He shoots Barbossa, holds up the coin, pierces his own hand with the blade, lets his blood fall on the coin, and drops it into the chest. The curse lifts. Barbossa, who was standing with the shot in him and who had not fallen because the curse had not allowed him to fall, looks at his hand. He sees the blood. He says that he feels cold. He falls. The crew of the Black Pearl, wherever they are, becomes mortal again in the same moment, capable of being hurt, capable of dying, capable of feeling the wind and tasting the rum, and being sunburned and cold, and everything else the curse had denied them. It arrives simply, without announcement, as the ordinary conditions of life reasserting themselves. Will is retrieved. Elizabeth is retrieved. The interceptor has been sunk, destroyed in the engagement between the two ships while the cave fight was ongoing. He has the Pearl. He no longer has the interceptor. The accounting of a Jack Sparrow voyage is always complicated. Norrington arrives. Commodore Norrington, who has been pursuing the interceptor from Port Royal, and who has now arrived with the naval fleet in the waters around Isla de Muerta, presents the specific authority of the British Empire reasserting itself at exactly the moment when the pirate adventure has reached its resolution. He is here for Jack. He is also here for Elizabeth, who is the governor's daughter and whose safety has been his professional and personal obligation throughout. He is a man who takes his obligations seriously in the way of someone whose sense of himself is organized around the taking of obligations seriously, who would not know how to conduct himself otherwise. He gives Jack a one-day head start. He gives it because Will and Elizabeth ask for it, and because Norrington is, beneath the uniform and the obligation and the form of his authority, a man who can recognize a genuine act, and who has recognized in what Will and Elizabeth have told him about what Jack did, and how the situation resolved itself, that something was done here that the law does not have a category for. The head start is not a mercy in the legal sense. It is the latitude of a man who is doing his job in a world where his job cannot quite account for everything that the world contains. Jack sails. The Black Pearl, with Jack Sparrow at the helm, moves through the Caribbean morning with the quality of a ship in full sail on open water. That quality the film has been building toward. The image of the thing that Jack wanted and that the entire adventure was organized around retrieving. He stands at the helm with the rum and the compass and the specific satisfaction of a man who has what he came for, which is not a small satisfaction and not a simple one, because the having of it has cost him specific things and will cost him more. But the having is real. He looks at the horizon. The horizon, for Jack Sparrow, is always the next thing, the next island, the next situation, the next occasion for the specific management of the world in the direction of what he wants. He is not a man who rests in what he has arrived at. He is a man who looks at what comes next, and the horizon is always where next is, and the Black Pearl under his feet is the means of reaching it. The film ends with him sailing. The compass in his hand points toward what he wants most, and what he wants most is ahead of him, and the Pearl is moving toward it in the morning light. The harbor at Port Royal in the early morning has a quality that the film lingers in briefly but precisely. The smell of salt and rope and the particular mixture of things that accumulates in a working harbor. The sounds of the rigging and the light wind that comes off the water before the day heats up and the wind changes. The ships moored along the quay are ships of the specific kind that the 18th century Caribbean trade produces. Some of them naval vessels built for the specific purpose of carrying the British Empire's authority into the waters of the New World. Others merchant ships, whose business is the movement of goods between the island colonies and the mother country, and between the colonies themselves. Each of them tells a different story about what this part of the world is for, and who it belongs to, and what the people who operate within it are trying to accomplish. The harbor workers are at their morning tasks when Jack arrives. The specific tasks of men whose work is the maintenance of the infrastructure through which the harbor functions, who load and unload and repair and resupply and keep the records that allow the harbor's commerce to be tracked. They do not particularly notice Jack, which is his preference. He has the air of a man who knows how to move through spaces in a way that does not attract the attention of people whose job is to notice things that seem out of place, and the harbor workers whose attention is on their own tasks are not inclined to look twice at a man moving along the dock with the purposeful air of someone who knows where he is going. He does know where he is going. He is going to the naval ships in the inner harbor, where the Interceptor is moored alongside the Dauntless, and the relative qualities of the two ships, the Interceptor being faster and more maneuverable, the Dauntless being larger and more powerful, are part of the calculation he is in the middle of conducting. The medallion at her throat is warm from her skin. She has had it since she was a girl, since the morning when a boy was pulled from the wreckage of a ship in the channel and the medallion came with him, tied around his neck along with the evidence of a past he had not yet been able to account for. She took the medallion. She kept it for reasons she could not then articulate, and has not since needed to articulate because the medallion has simply been with her, part of the daily physical inventory of herself. It is Aztec gold. She does not know this. What she knows is that it is unusual and that it belongs to the boy from the wreck, who is now Will Turner, the blacksmith's apprentice she has grown up alongside in this town, and that she has intended at various points to return it to him without ever quite finding the moment to do it. Elizabeth does not run. She moves through the attack with the quality of someone who is looking for something in the chaos rather than simply running from the chaos. She is looking for Will and for the ways in which the attack can be survived and then resolved, and the looking has the quality of a mind that is actively processing the situation rather than simply reacting to it. She finds the street where the attack is worst. She moves through it. She invokes parley when the pirates find her. And the invocation of the code, the specific knowledge of it, the fact of its existence as a provision that a pirate crew is bound by, is the thing that stops the situation from proceeding in the direction it was proceeding. It stops it because the pirates recognize it. The code is real. The provision exists. And Pintel and Rigetti, the two members of the Pearl's crew who find her, are people who know the code and who are, in their specific way, bound by it, who have been on this crew long enough that the code is simply the operating environment, and that invoking it correctly produces the correct response, regardless of whether the response is convenient. She's taken to Barbossa. The Black Pearl, seen from the water beside it rather than from the shore across from it, has a different quality from the ship that appeared on the horizon in the morning. At anchor in the harbor, with the fires of the town burning behind it and the boats coming and going around it, it has the quality of a living thing at rest, the specific presence of a ship that has personality, that is more than the sum of its timbers and its rigging and its guns, that carries in its black-painted surfaces and its particular silhouette the weight of the legend that has accumulated around it over the decade of Barbossa's command. The captain's cabin, where Barbossa receives Elizabeth, is not the cabin of a man without taste. He has accumulated things across the decade, specific things that speak to aesthetic interest rather than simply to the acquisition that pirates are supposed to be about. There are charts and books and the specific objects that a man of intelligence collects when the collecting is the only refinement available to him in the environment he inhabits. He sits behind a table spread with food and he eats. He eats knowing that he cannot taste it. in the specific, terrible habit of someone who has not yet stopped performing the motions of the life they cannot have, who continues to sit at tables and put food in his mouth because stopping would require an acknowledgement that the stopping is not prepared to make. He offers her a seat. He offers her food. She sits. She does not eat, or not immediately. She watches him with the specific attention of someone who is gathering information, and for whom information in this situation is the most useful possible thing, because she cannot fight her way out, and she cannot run her way out, and what she has available to her is her mind, and the things she knows and the quality of attention she is bringing to the conversation she is about to have. He is, she discovers, a man with a great deal to say. 10 years of the same obsession produce a specific eloquence about the subject of the obsession. The kind of speech that comes from a person who has lived with the topic for so long that they could speak about it from any angle at any time, who has had the conversations in their head so many times that the actual conversation, when it comes, has a quality of fluency that is almost conversational ease. He speaks about the gold. He speaks about the curse. He speaks about what the curse has taken from them with the combination of information and feeling that belongs to a man who is stating the facts of his own condition. He pours a drink and cannot taste it. This detail is the film's most quietly devastating portrait of what the curse actually means. Not the visual revelation, not the moonlit transformation of the crew into their skeletal selves, but the specific private moment of a man pouring a drink that he will not be able to taste, performing the gesture of pleasure in the complete absence of the experience of pleasure, going through the motions of a life that has been hollowed out to the shape of the motions. He pours it, and he drinks it, and his face has the specific blankness of someone for whom the expected experience does not arrive. He speaks of the Turner blood. Elizabeth, who has given him her name as Turner, listens. The negotiation between them, which is not so much a negotiation as a performance of negotiation, conducted by Elizabeth, who is buying time and information and the specific breathing room of a situation that is not being forced toward its worst outcome at this moment, is conducted with the quality of a conversation between two intelligent people who are both, in their different ways, working the situation. He is working it toward the coin and the blood. She is working it toward understanding, toward the specific knowledge of the thing she is in that will give her the best chance of surviving it. She learns about the Aztec gold. She learns about the chest. She learns that the curse requires the return of every coin with the blood of every member of the crew that took them, except that one of those members, Bootstrap Bill Turner, sent his coin to the bottom of the ocean, which means that the blood of Bootstrap Bill is not directly available, which means that the blood of the next available Turner will have to do. She understands at the end of this conversation that her false name has placed her in a position she did not anticipate. On the ship, the days have the texture of the ordinary shipboard life that is the background of the adventure. The watches, the maintenance, the cooking, the specific social world of a crew in passage. Gibbs manages the crew in the efficient and personal way of a first mate who knows his people and who keeps the ship running not through rigid discipline, but through the combination of competence and goodwill that produces cooperation more reliably than authority does. Jack moves around the ship with the quality of a man who is entirely at home. The ship is his element, in the same way that the harbor was not. On land, in Port Royal or Tortuga, he is charming and capable and managing, but there is always a quality of performance to the management, the quality of someone operating in an environment that is not entirely natural to them and that requires effort to navigate. On the ship, in open water, the management disappears. What is left is the sailor, the navigator, the man who reads the wind and the water and the sky with the specific fluency of someone who has been doing it for so long that the reading is not conscious but embodied, who knows where the ship is and where the ship should go in the way that other people know where their hands are without having to look at them. He is, at sea, most completely himself. Will watches him. He watches him in the way of someone who has been given a picture of a person that the person is not confirming, who arrived on this ship with a clear idea of what a pirate captain was, and who is finding that the clear idea does not map cleanly onto the specific person in front of him. Jack does not perform villainy. He does not perform menace. What he performs, consistently, is a kind of cheerful and practical engagement with the situation he is in, a genuine interest in the problems the situation presents, and a genuine pleasure in the solving of them, a quality of enjoyment that is not the enjoyment of someone performing enjoyment, but the enjoyment of someone who genuinely finds what they are doing worth doing. He also, Will notices, tells the truth. Not always. Not about everything. Jack Sparrow's relationship with the truth is complicated in the way of a man for whom the truth is a tool rather than an obligation, who uses it when it serves and withholds it when it does not. But when Jack tells you something directly, looking at you with the quality of his full attention, you find afterward that what he told you was what he knew to be true, that the direct telling is different from the sideways management, and that you can tell the difference once you have enough exposure to both. Will is getting the exposure. The sword fight in the hold is conducted not as a contest. Neither of them needs to determine a winner. Neither of them has a stake in proving themselves better than the other. But as the specific mutual exploration of what each of them is, they are examining each other through the medium of blades, in the way that can only be done through that medium, learning things about each other that cannot be communicated through conversation or observation, but only through the specific, intimate exchange of attack and response, of finding the other person's patterns and the other person finding yours. Will finds that Jack's style has no pattern in the sense that trained swordsmanship has a pattern. No school, no sequence, no the next move following the previous move in the predictable way of a technique that has been drilled until automatic. What it has instead is responsiveness, a constant adjustment to what is actually happening rather than to what the training says should be happening, a style that exists entirely in the present tense of the fight rather than in the anticipated future of what comes 3 moves from now. Jack finds that Will's training is better than he expected. He says so. He says so in the specific sideways manner of a compliment that is also information, that is telling Will something about the quality of the training and where it came from, and what it means that he fights like this, which is that he fights like a man who was trained by people with a specific tradition of swordsmanship that Jack knows about, which is a tradition that connects Will to a history Will is not aware of. The compliment is also, in this way, a question, and the question is one that the film will answer in time. Will listens to this, and the listening has the quality of someone receiving a large quantity of information and finding that the information is rearranging the picture they had of their situation, that the picture is becoming both larger and more personal than it was, that the story he is inside is longer than he knew it to be. He has a father who was a pirate. He has grown up believing one thing, and the thing he believed turns out to have been a simplified version of a more complicated truth. The simplification was protective. The story of a merchant sailor is a story that a child can hold with comfort, that does not complicate the child's sense of where they come from and what that origin means. The truth is more complicated, and Will finds himself on the interceptor in the Caribbean, being given the more complicated version without the comfort that the simplified version provided, and having to decide what to do with it. What he decides is to continue. He decides to continue because the continuation is what the situation requires, and because Will Turner is at his core a person who does what the situation requires regardless of how the situation feels about it. He came on this ship because Elizabeth was taken. Elizabeth being taken is still true. What he has learned about his father and about Jack and about the Pearl and about the curse does not change the fact that Elizabeth was taken, and the retrieval of Elizabeth is the thing that continues to organize him. The interceptor arrives at Isla de Muerta through a fog that has the quality of something intentional. Not the ordinary sea fog of a warm ocean morning, but a specific, persistent obscuration that covers the island and the rocks around it in a way that reads as the island concealing itself, as a place that does not want to be found by people who do not already know where it is. Jack navigates through it. He navigates with the compass in one hand and the wheel under the other, reading the rocks through the fog in the manner of a sailor who is navigating by knowledge rather than by sight, who knows where the rocks are because he has been here before, and because the knowledge of where the rocks are is the kind of knowledge that embeds itself in the navigator's body when the navigator has needed it urgently enough on previous visits. He moves the interceptor through the channel with the specific, unhurried precision of a man for whom this kind of navigation is simply what navigation is, for whom the drama of it is not felt as drama, but as the ordinary condition of sailing in complicated waters. The island emerges from the fog as an island that looks like what it is called, Isla de Muerta, the island of the dead. The rocks around it are bleached and bare in the way of rocks that nothing grows on, that have been scrubbed by the water and the weather into the specific neutral gray of things, that have been stripped of everything inessential that exists in their most reduced form. The island itself is not visible so much as implied, a darkness behind the rocks, a mass that the fog reveals partially and then conceals, that is present and not present in the manner of a place that has decided to be difficult about being found. Jack brings the interceptor to anchor in the channel. He and Will go forward in a longboat through the remaining fog into the specific enclosed water of the cave mouth that leads to the interior. The cave mouth is large enough for the longboat and low enough to require ducking. And the transition from the open water outside to the cave inside is the transition between two different worlds. The world of the Caribbean morning, with its light and its wind and its specific outdoor quality of a space that extends in every direction without boundary, and the world of the cave, which is enclosed and quiet and lit by what the gold inside it gives off rather than by what the sun provides. The cave opens into the space that the film has been building towards since the first mention of Aztec gold. The treasure of Isla de Muerta is, in visual terms, one of the film's great achievements. The specific accumulation of centuries of pirate plunder, rendered in the particular golden light that the gold itself seems to provide, filling the cave in the way of something that has been accumulating for so long that the accumulation has become geological, that has layered itself into the cave the way sediment layers into rock, with the specific density of things that have been building for a very long time. There are coins and jewels and paintings and the specific objects that have traveled from many different places and cultures to end up in this one place, stripped of their context and their histories and reduced to their material value, which is the specific violence of treasure, that it takes things from the places they meant something and puts them in a place where they mean only what they are worth. The chest of Cortez sits at the center of all of it. It is not the largest object in the cave. It is not the most visually impressive, but it has the specific presence of the thing that everything else is organized around, the thing the cave is for, and the thing the Pearl has been sailing toward for 10 years. It sits on its throne of other treasure, and it has been opened and closed so many times by the people who have needed what it contains that the wood of it has the worn quality of something handled obsessively, of an object that has been the focus of a very great deal of attention for a very long time. The coins are inside. 882 pieces of Aztec gold, all of them returned to the chest across the years of Barbassa's quest. All of them except the one that Bootstrap sent to the bottom of the ocean and that Will Turner, coming of age in Port Royal, has no memory of and no knowledge about. The chest is almost complete. The last piece is what the Pearl has been sailing toward in following the trail of the coin. The ceremony that Barbassa is preparing when Jack and Will arrive has the atmosphere of a rite that has been anticipated so long that the anticipation has become its own kind of ritual. Every movement and placement in the cave has the quality of something that has been rehearsed in the imagination countless times, that the people performing it have thought about so often that the thinking has become the primary form of the event, and the event itself is almost secondary to the thought that preceded it. Barbassa stands over the chest with the final coin in his hand. He speaks the words of the return. He prepares to make the payment of blood that the curse requires. And Jack arrives in the cave in the way that Jack Sparrow always arrives in a situation, at exactly the moment when the situation is most charged, most complex, most in need of the additional element that his presence provides, with the quality of someone who has timed his arrival, not through planning, but through the particular instinct for situation that is his most consistent quality. He begins to talk. The time inside the cave before the fighting is the film's most purely conversational section. Three people, or the principals of the three parties the story has assembled, in a space where what needs to happen is clear and where the question is only how it will happen and in what order and at whose advantage. Barbassa wants the blood and the coin and the lifting of the curse. Will wants Elizabeth. Jack wants the pearl and wants the specific outcome that palming one coin can produce if the timing is right. He manages the conversation. He manages it in the way he manages all conversations, by keeping himself slightly outside the logic of the exchange, by offering observations and proposals that redirect the conversation's momentum in the direction that serves him without appearing to redirect it by being three things at once and making sure that the people he is talking to are only tracking two of them. He proposes the deal with the interceptor. He speaks to Barbossa in the language of two men who know each other's interests and who can negotiate on that basis. He is also palming a coin. Will disrupts it by arriving before the timing is right. Will's arrival in the cave is the unplanned development that is always waiting inside the plans of people who are conducting their plans in a world that contains other people who are conducting their own. And the disruption it creates is the disruption of the real world entering the managed situation and insisting on being dealt with on its own terms, rather than on the terms of the management. Jack's plan required a specific sequence. Will's arrival collapses the sequence into the situation, and the situation now has to be managed in real time, rather than according to the planned order. Barbossa takes Will. He is exactly what is needed, and he is here, and the curse can be lifted now, tonight, in this cave with this blood. Jack adjusts. The adjustment is the specific quality that makes Jack Sparrow what he is. The capacity to absorb a development that has broken the plan, and to find, in the broken plan, the next available version of what can be done. To move from the planned situation to the actual situation, without the pause that most people need to make the transition. He adjusts. He continues. He has the coin. The cave becomes the scene of the fighting. The fighting in the cave of Isla de Muerta has the quality of fighting in a space that is not designed for it. A space where the floor is uneven with treasure, and where the light is wrong, and where the walls are close in some places, and open in others, and where the geography of the fight is constantly surprising, where moving 10 feet in any direction changes the conditions of the combat entirely. The Pearl's crew fights with the specific advantage of people who cannot be hurt in the ordinary way, who receive wounds without the ordinary consequences, who continue when they should stop, who are not deterred by what deters ordinary opponents. This makes them difficult to fight. It also means they have spent 10 years without the specific sharpening that genuine risk provides. And the Interceptor's crew, who can be hurt and who know it, have a quality of engagement that comes from that knowledge. Jack fights Barbossa through the cave. The duel between them moves through the gold, across the piles of it, up and over the structures it has formed, through the specific terrain that years of accumulation have built in the interior of a cave that was never designed for dueling. They fight with the history between them present in every exchange. The weight of the mutiny and the marooning, of the decades since, of the Pearl, and what the Pearl means to both of them. Barbossa fights with the confidence of someone who cannot die, or who has spent 10 years believing he cannot die. And Jack fights knowing that he has a coin in his hand, and that the coin changes the terms of what being shot means, and the knowledge gives him the quality of a man who is not afraid of the thing that would normally be most worth being afraid of. He falls from the shot. He falls and rises and holds up the coin. The coin is the hinge. It is the specific, small object that the entire story has been organized around, that has been present from the opening scene. It was around Will's neck when he was pulled from the wreck. It was at Elizabeth's throat through all the years since. It was the signal that called the Pearl to Port Royal, It is the last piece of the accounting that the curse requires. Jack has it. He has had it since before anyone in the cave knew he had it. He returns it on his own terms, with the blood of the turner he chooses, and in the moment he chooses. And the choosing is the act that the story was building toward. The specific exercise of the freedom that is Jack's defining value. The refusal to let the situation be resolved by anyone else's terms. The coin falls into the chest. The curse lifts. And Barbassa, who has been waiting for this moment across 10 years, and who receives it in the specific cave where it was supposed to happen, and does happen, has the exact amount of time to understand that it has happened, to feel the cold that is the return of sensation, to know that the curse is gone, that he is mortal again, that he can die before he does. Now that the story has gently unfolded, it can be interesting to reflect on some of the ideas behind the film. Pirates of the Caribbean. The Curse of the Black Pearl is, at its most fundamental level, a film about the relationship between freedom and law, about the specific tension between the world of Port Royal, with its uniforms and its regulations and its ordered hierarchy, and the world of the sea, where the ships go free of the harbor and the authority of the flag on the mast is the authority that the people on the ship choose to recognize. The film is careful not to make this opposition simple. Port Royal is not a bad place. Commodore Norrington is not a villain. The law that Jack lives outside of is, in its own terms, a reasonable law enforced by people who believe in it and who serve it with genuine integrity. But the film is clearly on the side of the sea. It is on the side of the sea in the way that certain kinds of stories are always on the side of the sea, in the way that the sea in the history of storytelling about freedom represents the condition of being outside the institutional arrangements that define what you can do and be, of being in the open space where the institutional definitions do not reach, where what matters is what you can do and who you are rather than what position you hold in the hierarchy that defines positions. Jack Sparrow is the film's fullest expression of this. A man who has organized his entire existence around the avoidance of the institutional, who operates in the gap between the rules with the specific skill of someone who has been doing it for a long time and who has made the gap into a home. The Curse of the Black Pearl is the film's central symbol, and it works on several levels simultaneously. On the surface level, it is a straightforward, supernatural plot device. The curse that drives the antagonists and that the story must resolve. On the deeper level, it is a metaphor for the condition of people who have sacrificed the experience of being alive in pursuit of what they thought would make them fully alive, which is wealth. The specific wealth of the Aztec gold. Barbassa and his crew found the treasure and took it and found that the taking had cost them the one thing that makes treasure worth having, which is the capacity to enjoy it. They cannot taste the gold. They cannot feel the warmth it represents. They are imprisoned inside a form of existence that has all the external markers of a full life and none of its interior qualities. The curse is, in other words, a story about what greed does to people. It is not a simple or heavy-handed version of this story. The film does not dwell on the moral implication. It presents the curse as a condition, manages the specific entertaining complications the condition creates, the immortal crew that cannot be defeated in the ordinary ways. the uncanny quality of the moonlit scenes where the curse reveals its effect on the bodies of those it holds, and trust the audience to register the deeper meaning without having it to point it out. The economy of this is one of the film's consistent strengths. Elizabeth Swann is the film's most quietly interesting character because the film gives her a specific intelligence and a specific agency that the genre she inhabits does not always grant to its female leads, and that make her something other than the object of rescue that the story's surface structure might suggest. She knows things. She knows the pirate code. She knows how to negotiate. She knows how to read a situation and find within it the element that can be worked with, and she does this throughout the film with the specific confidence of someone who has been educating herself for exactly these kinds of situations, even though she could not have known when she was educating herself that the situations would arrive in this specific form. She is not passive in captivity. She observes, she speaks, she manages her situation as actively as her situation permits. And the managing is not trivial. The false name, the parley, the conversations with Barbossa, these are acts of intelligence and of courage conducted in circumstances where neither intelligence nor courage is a guarantee of safety, but where both are better than their absence. Her relationship with Will Turner is handled with more restraint than the genre typically employs, which is appropriate for two people who have known each other since childhood and who have therefore developed the specific, comfortable avoidance of acknowledgement that characterizes feelings that have been present so long they have become embarrassing to name. They care about each other genuinely and completely, and they are unable, for most of the film, to say so directly, which is its own kind of honesty about how feelings work between people who have been in each other's lives long enough that the feelings have become part of the landscape rather than events within it. Will Turner's character is built around the question of inheritance and identity, around what it means to be the son of a pirate when you have been raised to be something else, when the categories you have been given for understanding the world place what your father was in a category that is not the category you want to belong to. He has been told that his father was a sailor, a good man, a merchant sailor, the respectable version of a man who goes to sea. He discovers across the course of the film that his father was Bootstrap Bill Turner, a pirate on the Black Pearl, a man whose specific choices placed his son in the situation the story is organized around. The discovery does not destroy Will. It complicates him in the way that discovering things about your parents always complicates you. It adds a dimension to the self-understanding that was not there before, requires a reconciliation between who you thought you were and who the new information suggests you might also be. His decision to take on some of the qualities of the pirate, to help Jack to break the law when the law requires breaking, to do whatever the situation requires rather than whatever the rules prescribe, is the film's portrait of that reconciliation. He does not become a pirate, but he becomes someone who understands and that the category of pirate is not the whole story of the people it contains, that his father was a man before he was a category, and that the man is worth understanding on his own terms. Jack Sparrow is the film's great invention, the character that distinguishes it from every other pirate film that preceded it, and most that have followed, And the quality that makes him extraordinary is worth examining with some care. He is performed as a man in a state of what appears to be constant, mild intoxication, whose physical relationship to the world has a specific looseness and unpredictability that makes him seem, at every moment, on the verge of losing his balance or his thread or the point he was making. The appearance is deliberate, and it is, in some sense, a performance within the performance. Jack Sparrow uses the appearance of his own unreliability as a tool, understands that people who underestimate him are easier to manage than people who assess him accurately, and has therefore constructed a manner that consistently produces underestimation while simultaneously doing the thing that the manner suggests cannot be done, which is thinking several steps ahead of everyone in the room. What he is, underneath the performance of the performance, is a man of genuine intelligence and genuine principles. Pirate principles, nothing Norrington would recognize as principles, but real, consistently held, and taken seriously by the film. The most important of them is the freedom principle. Jack Sparrow values freedom above all other things, and he means it completely, not only for himself, but as a general principle. The principle that people should be able to go where they want to go and be what they want to be without the specific institutional arrangement of the world deciding for them what that is. This principle is what makes him help Will, eventually, not the negotiated deal, not the alignment of self-interest, but the recognition that Will's situation and Elizabeth's situation, and even, in a specific sense, Barbassa's situation, all involve people who are not entirely free and who deserve, by Jack's lights, to be freer than they are. The Black Pearl, as a symbol, deserves its own consideration, because the film gives it the ye weight of something that is more than a ship. It is the thing Jack wants most in the world, the thing his compass points toward, the thing that the decades since the mutiny has been organized around the loss of. And what it is, the thing that makes it what it means to Jack, is not the power or the speed or the reputation that accrues to its captain, though these are real. What it is freedom. The Black Pearl is the fastest ship in the Caribbean, and that speed is the freedom, to go anywhere and to outrun what follows you, and to have no fixed point, no harbor that is home in the constraining sense, no anchor. Jack Sparrow on the Black Pearl is Jack Sparrow entirely free, which is Jack Sparrow as he most completely is. The final image of the film, Jack at the helm of the Pearl, sailing toward the horizon, compass in hand, is therefore the image of a person who has arrived at the condition of themselves, at the fullest available expression of who they are and what they value, and who is moving through the world in exactly the manner that expresses it. It is not a triumphant image in the conventional sense of a film ending on triumph. It is more specific than triumph. It is the image of a person going exactly where they want to go in exactly the way they want to go there, which is something rarer than triumph and something the film has worked hard to deserve. The film's lightness is one of its most carefully managed qualities. It is a film that deals with curses and death and theft and colonial authority and the specific violence of the pirate world, and it deals with all of these things while maintaining the specific tonal register of a very good adventure. Not an adventure that ignores the weight of what it contains, but one that carries the weight without being crushed by it, that moves through its own material with the ease of a story that knows what kind of story it is, and that inhabits that kind of story completely. The jokes are real jokes. The fights have stakes. The characters' feelings are the feelings of characters whose feelings matter. The tone holds because the film believes in what it is doing, and the belief makes the doing convincing. The world that Pirates of the Caribbean builds around its story is a world that requires a kind of agreement from the audience. The agreement to accept a Caribbean in which the supernatural and the physical coexist without the supernatural requiring justification. In which a curse is a curse and it works, the way curses are described as working. And the question of how this is possible is less interesting than the question of what to do about it. The film asks for this agreement at the beginning and then honors it consistently, which is the correct approach. Stories that establish their own rules and then follow them are stories that earn the trust they asked for, and Pirates of the Caribbean earns its trust in both directions. The supernatural elements of the story are the Aztec gold and its curse, and the curse is handled with the specific lightness that the film's overall tonal register requires, present and taken seriously in the terms of the story, but not dwelt upon in ways that would make it heavy, not used as an opportunity for the philosophical meditation on mortality that a more serious film would make of it. The film knows what the curse is for, which is the plot, and uses it for that purpose with the efficient clarity of a story that understands the difference between what it is and what it is not trying to be. The moonlight transformation sequences in which the cursed crew of the Pearl are revealed in their skeletal true forms as the moonlight falls on them are the film's most visually audacious moments, and they earn their place not as spectacle, but as information. They tell us what the curse actually does to the people under it, in the most direct possible visual terms, which is more efficient and more striking than any amount of dialogue explaining the same thing would be. The skeletons fighting in the moonlight and the men fighting in the darkness are the same people, and the doubling of their presentation, human in darkness, skeletal in light, is the perfect visual expression of the curse's central paradox, which is that they are alive and they are not alive simultaneously. The pirate code, which Elizabeth invokes to stop the Pearl's crew from simply taking her, is a detail that the film handles with the pleasure of a story that has thought carefully about the world it is building and that knows the code's existence adds texture to that world. That it suggests a pirate culture with its own internal structure and its own governing principles, however different those principles are from the governing principles of Port Royal. The code is not treated as a joke. It is treated as a real operating constraint on the behavior of the people who are bound by it, which gives it a specific weight that a purely comic treatment would not have. Barbossa's binding by the code in accepting Elizabeth's parley is the first indication that the Pirates of the Pearl are not simply chaos, that they are a different kind of order operating by different rules, but that the rules are real and that the people operating by them take the rules seriously in the way that people take seriously the rules of the community they belong to. This is a subtle but important point about what the film is saying about the pirate world, which is that it is not simply the absence of order, but a different kind of order, one that has developed its own traditions and its own obligations and its own form of honor. The Tortuga sequence is the film's fullest exploration of the pirate world as a specific cultural environment, and it handles that environment with the right balance of comedy and texture. Tortuga is not presented as a paradise or as simply a den of depravity, but as a place that has its own ecology. A community of people who have arrived there by various routes and who have developed, in the absence of the institutional frameworks that organize most communities, their own specific forms of social organization. They drink and they fumate and they do the things that the stories about them say they do, but they also maintain ships and conduct business and remember their friends and have the specific ongoing life of a community that is not simply chaos, but a different kind of order. Gibbs is the film's most complete portrait of this community, a man of genuine competence and genuine loyalty who operates within the pirate world not because he lacks the capacity for the legitimate world, but because the pirate world is where he has built his life, where his skills and his character have found their expression, where he is most completely himself. His loyalty to Jack is not the loyalty of a subordinate to an authority, but the loyalty of a person to someone they have chosen, freely, knowing what the choice entails, to be with, which is a different and more meaningful form of loyalty. The specific economy of the Interceptor's crew reflects something the film quietly notes. The pirate ship runs as a kind of democratic enterprise. The captain is elected rather than appointed. Plunder is distributed by negotiated rules rather than rank. Jack's authority is not the authority of rank, but of competence. He does not demand loyalty. He earns it by consistently delivering when delivery matters. The relationship between Jack and Will Turner develops across the film through several distinct stages that track the arc of two people discovering each other, and the arc is handled with enough care and enough patience that the discovery feels earned rather than convenient. They begin as a transaction. Will needs Jack's knowledge, and Jack needs Will's blood. They proceed through the sword fight, which teaches each of them something about the other that conversation could not. And they arrive at Isla de Muerta with something that is not yet friendship, but that has moved well beyond the original deal. Two people genuinely invested in each other's outcome. The moment when Jack adjusts his plan to help Will, when he steps into the situation in the cave in a way that prioritizes Will's rescue alongside his own purposes, is the film's most direct statement of this development, that the transaction has become something else, that the something else matters enough to change the calculation. The symbolism of the Black Pearl as freedom has been noted, but it is worth dwelling on the specific form that freedom takes in the film's visual presentation of the ship. The pearl is black. The specific choice of black paint, which in the context of naval vessels of this era is extraordinary, is a deviation from the norm as complete as it is possible to be, is the most obvious statement the ship makes about what it is and what it represents. It is not red, which would mean aggression, or white, which would mean surrender, or the plain wood-colored of an unpainted ship. It is black, which means night, which means the absence of visibility, which means the specific freedom of a thing that cannot be easily seen, and therefore cannot be easily tracked, that exists in the space between what is visible and what is hidden. It also means, in the simplest visual sense, something that is other than the white-sailed ships of the British Navy, other than the merchant vessels with their practical colors, other than every other ship in the waters where it sails. The Black Pearl is recognizable from a great distance, and the recognition it produces is a specific kind. Not the recognition of a flag or a designation, but the direct recognition of the thing itself. The knowledge that comes from seeing those black sails, that is immediate and complete. Everyone who sees it knows what it is. The knowing is the point. Elizabeth's character deserves the observation that she is the person in the story who moves most freely across the film's central opposition, who is at home in Port Royal and also capable in the pirate world, who knows the code and also knows the drawing room, who negotiates with Barbossa with the same quality of intelligence she brings to the social management of the governor's house. She is not simply a character who is rescued, though she is also that. She is the person who invoked the parley that saved her life before the rescue arrived, who gave the false name that delayed the worst outcomes long enough for the situation to develop in a direction other than its worst, who managed the cave and the ship and the specific conditions of her captivity with a consistent, active intelligence. The film's portrait of her is one of its genuine achievements, because it makes the competence feel natural rather than marked. It does not point at her intelligence or her courage, or make them remarkable in ways that suggest they are exceptions to the expected. They are simply what she is, and what she is a person who is better at most of what matters than the people around her assume. Her feeling for Will is the film's most emotionally grounded relationship, because it has the quality of something that has accumulated over a long time without being named, that has the depth of years without having been tested by declaration. When the testing comes, when the film puts them in the situations that require honesty, the depth is visible in the way that depth is visible only when it is pressed. The film ends where it begins, in a sense, on the water, with Jack, moving. Jack at the helm of the Pearl, compass in hand pointing toward wherever he is going next, is the completion of the story's central arc. The man who lost the thing that made him most himself has it back. The rest of it, the rum and the horizon and the ship in open water under full sail, is what that looks like. The compass pointing toward what he wants most is the film's final symbolic image, and it resonates because what it points toward has been consistent throughout. Jack's compass has always pointed in the same direction, which is toward the Pearl. Now the Pearl is under his feet, and the compass, presumably, is pointing toward whatever comes next. The next island, the next situation, the next thing worth wanting. The compass is always pointing. The wanting is always there. The horizon is always ahead. And so the story of Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl, leaves us here on the open water, with the sound of the rigging and the wind, and the specific blue of the Caribbean around us in every direction, and the knowledge that the ship is going somewhere worth going, that the person at the helm is the right person at this helm, that the freedom being exercised here is the genuine article and not a performance of it. The curse is lifted. The chest is closed. The gold is where it belongs, and the people who paid for their greed with a decade of sensationless existence have paid in full. What remains is the morning and the water, and wherever the compass points. Rest well in this story. The sea will hold you until the morning comes. Rest well.